Who needs a sweater?
It's a little chilly up here, right?
It's a little chilly.
Yeah. Well, welcome to
survive.
X-Fest.
Well, thank you for having me, Heather.
Thank you so much. How has your experience been so far today?
My experience so far today has been like it kind of always is, which is really nice people being kind to me and making me feel welcome, and asking interesting questions and coming from faraway places quite often to say hello, like Mexico City.
Someone's here from Mexico City?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, people are coming all over from X-Fest.
And England and, yeah, Liverpool. Australia.
Miami. Oh, I guess it's...
Italy? No. Look at that. Fantastic.
Wow. So, okay, so we're talking about people coming in from all over in order to be part of this event. So I want to know, how has being part of the X-Files impacted your life?
Somebody asked me today, you know, did you, not too long ago, did you ever expect that you'd be, you know, all these years later after the show had aired, you know, did I imagine I'd still be here at an event doing something like this? And, you know, when I was doing the show, I had no idea I'd ever be at any event doing anything. So it's, you know, it obviously helped me professionally because the show was so widely seen and appreciated. It was a remarkable role to play in many ways because I got to do so many extraordinary things and be involved in crazy stunts and crazy storylines. I made friends, lifelong friends from the show, and it taught me that I could be a part of a show that was critically acclaimed, and that I had the ability to be a part of a show like that. So, I mean, it sort of helped me kind of on many fronts, really.
So obviously, like, your character definitely had a lot of different story arcs. Maybe some would say, at some points, you were the bad guy. So what kind of mentality had to go into playing the role of the bad guy?
Well, it's always a trap to imagine that you're either, for me anyway, that the character's either good or bad, because, you know, good people do bad things and bad people quite often try to be good. So if you're trying to bring any complexity to the role, it's best to not imagine good or bad, but just the why. Forgotten her name, with the t-shirt, the Krycek t-shirt, it says team whoever's winning. Maybe she's not here, but which is super clever and kind of totally hits the nail on the head. You know, he was a pretty self-serving character who quite often was just literally trying to survive. But you know, good or bad, it is not a criteria for me.
Because you have to, like, as I hate using the word again, bad guy, you have to convince yourself that, you know, this is the direction and the choices that this character would make. Yeah. And okay, that makes a lot of sense.
One of my goals was to, and I mean this, was from the beginning, was to never allow the audience to have a consensus on whether I was good or bad. That, you know, people always say they love to hate the character, and I like that. But my goal was to make people always question, you know, where my loyalties lay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so something that I'm personally curious about. You were on an episode of SNL.
I was.
What was that experience like? You got to, you know,
unbelievable. I'll never ever forget it. I was in New York at the time, and David was the guest star on Saturday Night Live, and I was talking to him on the phone, and he said, "Do you want to be on the show?" And I said, "Well, of course I do, but how's that ever going to happen?" And he spoke to them, and they said, "Yeah, great, love it, bring him in." So next thing I know, I'm sitting in makeup next to Will Ferrell, who's a huge X-Files fan, and he's like, "Oh, I'm such a big fan of yours," and I was like, "What is happening?" We did. So I'm sitting in my room. It's got my name on the door and everything. And there's they film two shows. They film like an 8 o'clock show, and then they film the 11:30 show live, of course. And just in case anything goes wrong at the 11:30 show, they've got something they can slide in there. And there was a knock on my door at probably 10:30, and they said, "Lauren wants to see you." And I thought, oh my God, what could I have possibly done? And that's my issue, right? Somebody says they want to see me, and I think I've done something wrong. And I walk into his office quietly. He's got this massive, expansive office, and there's Lorne Michaels sitting behind his desk. And every person that's connected to the show in any meaningful way, cast, crew, and makeup, and props, and writers, and everybody's there. And Lorne Michaels is sitting there with a Heineken on his desk, and he's going through what the show is going to be that night, an hour before they go up. So this scene's out, this scene's in, camera B, I want you closer on Will's face, and he goes through this entire litany of notes on how the show's going to run. So he does this amazing last minute edit on the show before they go live. And John Goodman was there, and Paul Abdul was there because it was the end of the season, so they had all these special guests to be on the show. And then there was this massive party downstairs at the bottom of the Rockefeller Center. And before the show ended, this is a long story. Before the show ended, Jimmy Page and Puff Daddy were the musical guests doing Kashmir. And if you've ever been in that room, the sound in that room is like top notch. It's remarkable. And it's weird to me because you go to Rockefeller Center, you get on the elevator, and you go to like the 70th floor, and you get out, and that's where they shoot Saturday Night Live. To me, it never occurred to me that that's how, that they did it somewhere in a studio. They don't. They do it downtown on the 70th floor. And so at the end of the show, when everybody's there and everybody's, being, the applause is happening, and the host is thanking everybody, I'm like hiding in the back. And they said, no, you have to go up front. And I said, no, I'm not going to. And they pushed me up to the front, and I'm standing next to Puff Daddy and Jimmy Page. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. This is remarkable. And then there was a party after at Puff Daddy's place, at Puff's place. And we all walked over there, and I walked up there with Tracy Morgan and Chris Kattan, and we told jokes all the way, and it was, I'll just never forget it.
You went to a Puff Daddy party?
I went to Puff's apartment.
What? Okay.
Yeah, no, it's like, again, it kind of slides into that thing of like, did you ever imagine you'd be X, Did you ever imagine that this would, no, never, wow. Never. I'll never forget it. I mean, there was a thing at Andrews Air Force Base a number of years ago, and the military has a vote every year on who they'd like to have as a special guest. The first year was Harrison Ford, the second year was Tom Hanks, the third year was me. Which makes zero sense to me. But somehow they'd done a poll of all the people in the armed services, and who did they want to have as a, it was me. So I went there, and as part of that trip, I went to the White House. My friend and I were working on a pilot at the time, so we went to the Pentagon, we went to the FBI, we went to the CIA, the CID, we went to Cheyenne Mountain, to NORAD. I was going to be able to go up in an F-16 jet, but I didn't get the information to them quick enough, and it didn't happen. But I did skydive with the Golden Knights, which is like, it's just like, so, all the things that have come out of getting this job are sort of remarkable, and they're almost kind of endless, And then I'm in Havana, like in 2010, as an example, and I was renting this apartment from this dude, and he said, I have to go buy something today, do you want to go with me? And I was there by myself, and didn't know anybody, and I was standing in this guy's backyard in Havana, and there's this guy in overalls, and he's doesn't speak English, but he's working on somebody's motorcycle, and he looks at me and goes, and in Spanish says, are you on the X-Files? And I was like, how, what? It just doesn't make sense, right? Like, I'm just an actor. I'm fortunate enough to get on this show and a few other shows, you know, and then you're in Havana, and I think they have like one station, and you know what I mean, and not everybody has a television set, and Buddy knew who I was, and I just could knock me out, couldn't believe it.
So before we open this up to questions from the audience, from what I was researching, your character was only initially supposed to be on a few episodes.
Yeah,
so
3.
What do you think changed? Like, what do you think about the role of Krycek that made people want to see more?
I don't think that's for me to answer. I'm not sure I know particularly the answer to that. I think David probably needed a nemesis of some kind, and sort of a contemporary that wasn't, the smoking man. So, this is a good question, but I'm not sure I have an answer to that one.
Okay.
No.
We'll tweet someone. We'll figure it out. All right. So we have a microphone that's right in the middle of the room. I know it's a little intimidating, but whatever questions you have for Nicholas, now's your chance.
This feels like hearings.
And I kindly ask just for time purposes, one question per person. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Chase.
Chase.
My question is just, have you ever thought about like Krycek's background, like what led him to become this kind of double agent type character? Like, do you think he ever would have just been like a clean-cut, straightforward FBI agent, or was he kind of destined to do this darker storyline?
That's a good question. I work sometimes. It depends on the role. Like for me, it completely depends on the role, on how I'm going to do the work around it. I don't have a set way of approaching anything. This was kind of so fantastical that for me, it was mostly imagination. I was just trying to be a kid and use my imagination. And so I didn't do like a ton of work on backstory or where I come from or why or my parents. My parents clearly had been Russian, I found out much later. And X-Files is a show where you start at point A and you end up at the end, but you hit 11 or 12 or 13 or 15 points in between that are not necessarily alphabetical, if you know what I mean. So the story was evolving constantly and in such an extreme way that you kind of just had to go with the flow. And if you watch the show closely enough, which I'm assuming most people have, you sort of see that some things fit and some things kind of like sometimes don't quite fit. And why is that? It's very, 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 very hard. And if you come to Frank Spotness's Q&A, he might touch on that. It's a very hard thing to write a show for that many years and keep it constantly fresh and constantly meaningful and relevant to the viewers. That's why shows like Breaking Bad, they do 5 years, they get out, because you can't maintain it. These guys, I think, did a remarkable job of doing that, but as an actor on this particular, if it was ER or if it was, something along those lines that's relatively straightforward, you would do all that work of background, and you would constantly be doing that work, and the information that would come to you as the actor would always be informing your background. But on this show, it kind of bounced around enough that I realized that I kind of just had to roll with it as it came to me,
Yeah. All right, thank you.
I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I'll take it.
What's your name?
My name is Emily.
Hi.
I have more of a comment. I met you last year at X-Fest, and I cried a lot. And you were really, really sweet, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I bought a ticket to have breakfast with you tomorrow.
Great.
But I'm afraid that I'm going to kind of freeze up and not say anything.
You're gonna what?
Freeze up.
Oh.
So what I did was I wanted to make sure that you understood what the X-Files meant to me. So I wrote you a letter, and I'm wondering if I can give that to you.
Of course you can.
Okay.
Before you do that, so again, I go for an audition. I get a job. It was just the actor's life. You never know where it's going to go, what it's going to turn into, what the ramifications might be, what the future might hold. You never know. But I'm a guy who got a job. I worked hard at that job. I try to work hard at every job that I get because they're hard to get. And I always tell people, and I don't mean this or suggest this from a vantage point of any kind, but there's no difference between you and I. So you don't need to ever be nervous around me or be shy or to clam up and not say anything. When we're sitting at breakfast tomorrow, you have the freedom to speak about whatever you want to talk about, whatever that is. It can be social, political.
Yeah, I won't go into politics.
But you know what I mean? Like, so when you walk in tomorrow, just walk in with that we're just friends and there's nothing to worry about.
I will try.
Somebody told me something a while ago, and I try to remember it, and that's actually I saw it from a study, and they interviewed all these septuagenarians, all these people that were 80 or over, and they asked them 100 questions, and they all answered them. Thank you for the water. And the number one thing that all these people who were at the end of their lives said, don't worry about something that hasn't happened yet. So don't worry about something that hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Thank you.
But thank you for saying that, because I think a lot of us do have that same mentality, and I think you really put it into perspective that you're just a normal human like us, but it's still the fact that you're here and taking the time out of your life to be here with us, and we do appreciate that a lot.
Well, everybody's taking the time out of their lives to be here. The only difference is you see me on a box. And so I heard somebody talk about that once, that when you put somebody into a box in a frame and you see their frame and their face inside a frame, that something happens and it changes your perception of who that person is somehow. And that television is just a bunch of people like you guys just doing a slightly a different job. It still requires focus and hard work. I mean, listen, my sister's was a registered nurse. You want to talk about a tough job or a demanding job or a job that deserves, support and applause. It's that kind of a thing, right? So, hi.
Hi. I was wondering, what is your favorite Monster of the Week episode?
Home. For sure. For sure. Do you know have you seen that one?
Yes.
You're too young for that. What's your name?
Lily.
Hi.
Hi.
Lily. Yeah, it's for sure that one. For sure, because it's so weird, and they took such risks, and I think that they, if I'm not mistaken, they almost, the censors almost came in and said, you can't air that. But it followed this great tradition of that kind of storytelling, whether it's in movies or television or books or wherever, where it's like, not only is that kind of gross, but it's hideous and it's weird and it's disturbing. I love that stuff. I love it, right? And the actors were great, right? Karen Conoval is here this weekend. You guys must see her, because she's a friend of mine. Her and her husband are friends of ours, and that stuff that she did in the was it the last season of the show? Was it? It's just crazy good, right? And then you see her in Planet of the Apes, and it's a completely different thing. And I tell you that it's not the special effects in the Planet of the Apes that makes those movies great. It's the actors that make that movie great. Andy Serkis and all those people that play those roles. But no, Home for sure, because it's just so weird, right? So weird. I love it.
Well,
I love weird.
I will say that I closed my eyes for most of it.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm not surprised. And just remember, it's only a story. Yeah. Good question. Thank you.
Right, I'll do the mic properly this time. Kurt from the Xcast. My question is twofold in some ways. What do you remember about the scene when Melissa got shot, but in general, not necessarily, not so much about that scene, but the ramifications that it has for your character and how you thought that was going to be portrayed once you get into that atmosphere? Because that feels like that point was becoming such a phenomenon, and the fact that you were effectively there for obviously Mulder's dad and then Melissa. So, how did you feel with that, with becoming such an important part of the show?
Melinda McGraw
Yeah.
is a good friend of mine.
Yeah. She's here tomorrow. Yes.
Although I haven't seen her in a very long time, so I'm really looking forward to seeing her this weekend at some point. You know, I knew that it would enrage people on some level, and I was delighted about that. You know, in the same way that, I mean, every time I see Duchovny, he still says, "You killed my father." So it's just part of that lore, you know. I mean, I emotionally, you know, I don't imagine that it affected the guy a tremendous amount. He was just doing what he had to do, and if somebody had to die, somebody had to die. You know, it was as simple as that. But you know, doing those things is just great fun, right? It's, I mean, that's what's so wonderful about this show is that the stories go so high and so far and capture imaginations, right? So to be a part of that, to be even just a small part of it, really, is just a really good feeling. And obviously it's affected people, because here we are all these years later, and we're in Schaumburg and we're doing the deal. But I don't remember having any kind of like sort of, you know, doing any deep actorly work on that. I think I just sort of relished the badness of it.
That's what I like
of the act, not of the character, but of the act.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, man. Hi.
Hi. My question kind of relates to what you were talking about before, delight, and what's fun about the character.
Yeah.
What did you have most fun doing? Either a scene or an episode?
Well, I you know, honestly, it was the stunty stuff that I did. And of which there was plenty. I mean, you know, I tell this story pretty regularly, but I ran out of an exploding car that was full of plastic, massive plastic containers of gasoline that blew up behind me. They hung me from 17 floors by one arm, which originally Kim Manners came to me and said the way we're going to shoot it is you're going to be standing on a platform and we're going to shoot you at a particular angle. So you'll be out there, but you'll be standing on a platform and we just won't see your feet. And I said, well, that's kind of boring, isn't it better if you actually see like the guy's feet and you see that he's hanging? And they said, well, yeah, I suppose that's better. Would you do that? And I said, sure, I'll do that. And you know, because you just trust, right? You trust the guy, the crew on the show, the special effects people, the stunt people were top notch, right? And you know, accidents happen, and for sure. But and I remember I was like, sort of like, this is no problem, not to worry. They put me in a harness, and we went through a bunch of safety talks, and then they hung me out there, and I was like, get me inside right now. Because it was a long way down. It was like 200 feet down, right? And I was hanging just by, I mean, I was totally safe, but it didn't feel like it at the time. So they shot it as quick as they could, and they hauled me back in. You know, in Tunguska, David and I are being, we get run down by guys on horseback. Well, we're standing in the middle of like 5 massive horses who are right there, but the horses are so well trained, and you know, they're up on their back legs and they're stomping the ground all right next to us. It's thrilling, right? It's scary, but it's thrilling, and so that sort of goes above and beyond an acting job and becomes like sort of a thrilling exercise. And I'm a kind of a bit of a risk taker. I sort of always have been. you know, but those are I love those. I love that stuff. But you know, here's the thing. I'm a much better actor now, and I'm not being funny. I'm a much better actor now than I was then. Like hands down, I'm a way better actor now. And I want so much to get a chance to revisit this character, and I haven't had a chance. And it kind of gnaws at me a little bit. And I don't judge, I don't blame anybody for it, but I really, if they ever do it again, and if you guys happen to be at Frank's spot and it says Q&A, make sure you bring that up, because I do, you know, I don't care about being on. It's not the fanfare that I'm interested in. I got other things going on in my life now that are much more important than that. But the opportunity to revisit this character and improve on this character is what I'd like to do.
Thank you.
And I know that's something we would all like to see, right?
So we have about 5 minutes left. So we have time for maybe one more question.
Don't be scared. Now's your moment.
No one's got a question?
Okay, we got one. Do you want to? Well, we'll do 2 more questions then. Come on down.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Mitzi, and this is a non-X-Files related.
Sure.
I just want to know what kind of hobbies or what kind of things do you like to do on your spare time?
In my spare time. Well, up until December 17th, it was there was a lot of things. I have a property on an island off the coast of Vancouver that's a couple of acres of forest and garden and house and beach and stuff like that. And I got it like 20 years ago, and that's sort of my kind of one of my pet projects. And it's completely off grid, so it's solar panels and it's rainwater collection and all that kind of stuff. And my boat is there, and it's a dream place. I always, it's so secluded. I always say that you could like do human sacrifice on the beach and nobody would ever know. But there's no, I mean, you know, there's only a few little places on this little island, and it's such a getaway, and it's one of the most peaceful places in the world. And I love to like be in the garden, and you know, working and doing that kind of stuff. What's the director, the Canadian director, Norman Jewison? I went to a Q&A with him once, and I said, how do you balance working, because I'd just seen a documentary about him, and he was at his farm in Ontario, and he was like shoveling cow shit out of the barn. I was like, he's like a world famous director. And I said, how do you balance that life between Hollywood and your farm? And he said, he thought about it for a second. He gave the most perfect answer. He said, you always got to keep your hands in the dirt. So I like keeping my hands in the dirt. In fact, I had to like clean my fingernails before I came because there was dirt. I didn't want people to think I was a, you know. But on December 17th, I had twins. So my spare time has changed dramatically. And it's all about them at the moment, and probably will be for some time to come. One's not that. One is, people said, you know, it was so hard having a baby. It's so hard. We had one, they were both in hospital, one for 54 days and one for 91 days. And the one of them came home, and so we had just one baby at home for like 40 days. And we were like, you know what, this isn't that hard. It's not easy, but it's not that hard. And then the second one came home, and the shit just hit the fan. One baby is a challenge. 2 babies is like 15 times harder, I promise you. Yeah, but they're pretty cute.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, the final question.
All right.
So there are 2, and they're pretty easy. So the first is, who did you most enjoy working with on set? And the second one is, I'm wondering about the black oil. Was it CGI? Was it contacts? What was it?
No, black oil CGI.
It was, okay.
It was, except there was a practical stunt where I was buried at the bottom of a missile silo, and the black oil decided it wanted to get out through my eyes and my nose and my mouth. So what they did is they made me a mask. They made a mask, and if you look closely, it's so the show was like the show's so old that like, you know, you can tell it's a mask. And Hey, Frank, we were just talking about you. And so I was wearing this mask. And so what it was all these tubes that ran through the mask, through my hair, down my back, down the stage, and then there's a guy down below pumping this like sugary black stuff through it. And action. He's like pumping away. He's like, and all of a sudden, it's all like pouring out of my. So I just did my best to go with it.
How did they get it to like pour out of your mouth then?
Because it was all a mask with all tubes and everything, right? All coming to the orifices, as it were. And then close your ears, Frank. And then so I was sitting there and I had all this shit going down my face and down my clothes and everything. And then that's lunch. And everybody left, and they forgot about me. And I was sitting there in this mask and covered in like black sugary goo. And that doesn't happen every day, let me tell you that.
Yeah, I bet.
And I was like, what is going on? And there was a box, and I couldn't see, right? Because I had these things over my eyes, and I saw a box, and I kicked it because I was so mad. It was like full of glasses, and I was like, oh my God. Anyway, somebody eventually found me, came and got me, got it off, and I went and had lunch.
Oh my God.
No, but I was just talking about like all the crazy, wonderful stuff I got to do on the show, you know, and how opening the script was always like Christmas because, and I sort of feel specifically a little bit from my character. I mean, for everybody, it was the truth as well. But there were so many nutty things that I had the good fortune of being able to do. That those experiences will follow me everywhere, and I'll never forget hanging from 17 floors. I'll never forget. There's another story quickly about that exploding car. So I'm sitting in this exploding car, and I'm surrounded by all these containers of gasoline, and we go through safety meeting. Rob Bowman's directing. I love Rob, totally trust him. Everything's great. I'm supposed to run out of the car, and I hit a mark, and as soon as I hit the mark, a special effects guy hits a plunger and the car explodes. And I'm far enough away that it's not gonna, have any effect on me. So it's pretty nerve-wracking sitting in a car surrounded by gasoline. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's got a detonator attached to it. So action, I get out of the car and I run as fast as I can and I cross the mark and nothing happens. And I look around and I look at the guy with the plunger and he's going. And so take two. I got to go back into the car now, and I'm sitting in the car, and I'm just like sweating bullets, and I'm like, and so action! I get out of the car, running, and just as I hit the light, it blows, and it feels like somebody goes boo from behind. And it's hot up my back, and it knocks me right off my feet. I mean, with my help, because I was, but you don't get to do that every day. Is my point. And so, those experiences to me are so memorable and so wonderful and really have a special place in my heart. And I only consider myself to be fortunate to have been able to do it, Yeah.
And really quickly, I think the second part of her question was, who did you enjoy most working with?
David and I were hung around a lot back then. We live in different places now. I don't see him as regularly. I had some fun with him a couple years ago. Got up and sang with his band in Vancouver, which was really fun. You can find that on YouTube if you're interested. What? That's what I used to do. Yeah, I sang in a band for like 5 or 6 years, and now my girlfriend and I and a couple other actors in town in Vancouver have a band, and we started getting it together. But so David and I had a good friendship out of it, and it was, Frank, Bob Goodwin, the ever memorable and wonderful Kim Manners, Rob Bowman, these guys who. I had the good fortune to go to work with every day, and I'm an actor that tries to come to work with lots of ideas, and some people appreciate that and some people don't. Frank and Rob, who I worked with mostly, were always open to that idea. The first time I worked with Rob was the very first episode of The X-Files I ever did in Gender Bender, and there was a scene in the car where I was supposed to be having sex with this woman who turns into a man. which also doesn't happen every day. And so I said to Rob, I said, wouldn't it be a good idea if we fogged up the window, because we're in there having sex, right? For getting foggy inside the car. And the idea would be that I would, and I said, and I'll wipe back the window, and then that'll be the big reveal. And he's like, love it. So they go to the truck and they get a kettle, and before each take, they're like kettling up the window. And then we're down in LA shooting, and we're on top of a building at Fox. And I said, wouldn't it be cool? I've got this like clandestine meeting with this guy. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if like just my jacket was kind of like fluttering in the wind? Sort of like Spy Who Came In From the Cold. And he goes, yeah, love it. They go down to the truck and they come back with this like huge fan, just so like my jacket can go like this in the wind, right? But just all these little aesthetics things that I think kind of add up to something at the end of the day, and it's always wonderful to have your ideas validated, And listen, and that's to me, I think that's what makes those guys so great. Is they're not authoritarians. They're team players who open their ears and listen to the people around them, right? And that's another thing is it's just like it's teamwork, and every person that has a little job or a big job, it all comes together at the end of the week, at the end of the episode, and after that, when all the people who take the film or the footage and put it all together, it's this massive machine that sometimes it's remarkable that it ever gets done, that you ever get an hour of television on the tube, because there's just so much goes into it. And the first couple of years of the show, when they weren't, when it wasn't the big hit, they were going location to location to location to location to location, and Hong Kong and Arlington Cemetery out in a fishing boat out in the Pacific, and to do that and to move an army like that is a real undertaking, and there's nothing easy about it, and that's why guys like Frank and Chris and Bob Goodwin and those guys really deserve the lion's share of the credit, Yeah. Thank you very much for having me. You guys are wonderful.
One more time for Nick.